My name is Abby, and I am here with my friend Danielle because we are all interested in how to raise kids who are advocates, right? How do we raise kids who can talk about, we'll probably primarily be talking about race in this session, but and sexuality and gender, and how do we raise children who talk about all those things? So Danielle is a friend of mine. We met on the internet, which I feel like a lot of people can say that now. We're both bloggers, and we did an event that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with race, and Danielle is highly qualified to be having this conversation. So Danielle writes at mamademics.com, and she is the mother of a 4-year-old, right? Brax is 4? A 4-year-old son, and she is teaching a class currently on that is called Raising an Advocate. And so I may have stolen her title for this. And so Danielle is, writes, you've written in the Huffington Post, you've written for Blog Her, you've gotten a Blog Her award. You run this amazing class. In case you needed to know, there's sessions available right now. You can sign up September and October. And you also are completing your PhD in English and Rhetoric, right? Yeah. So this is Danielle, and I'm really excited to talk to her today, as I'm sure all of you are. So Danielle, I'm not even going to start with how. No, I am going to start with how. How has this come up? Or how did you get here? Because I don't think that anyone like in the second grade says like, when I grow up, I am going to teach a class online, right? Because that wasn't really a thing when we were in the second grade. When I grow up, I'm going to teach a class online about, that's not a thing, right? Like I'm going to teach a class about race and talking about race and teaching parents how to talk about race.
I didn't even, wait, is my mic on?
Are you on?
No, I don't know. Uh-oh. Sorry, guys.
Let me check and see if you're muted. Okay, try again. Is she on?
Yes?
No.
Yes? I
Yeah.
am? Okay.
No.
There you go.
Yes?
Yes. Okay.
Oh, that's loud.
Yeah, I know. Then it freaks you out for a second.
So I didn't grow up talking about race in this type of context. Like, I grew up I knew I was black. I went to school with other black kids, and that was pretty much it until I started college, and I was the only black girl in my hall, in the dorm. So that became this is like a really big thing still, and we need to talk about it. But I always say that like 3 years ago, I would not have been doing this. Like when people ask me, would you do this? I talked to my students about it at Georgia State, but I still didn't think that I would be doing this. And I wrote a post. That post went viral.
What was the title of that post? Danielle, I forget.
It was called Out of Sight, Out of Mind, Why White Moms Need to Care About Murdered Black Children. And I was mad when I wrote the post. And I don't typically publish angry posts. So that's kind of like my rule. I don't want to be the angry black woman, so I won't post an angry post. And my friend was like, no, you're going to post this one. And I was like, okay, fine. I went ahead and published it, and I got really mean comments, but for the most part, I got tons of moms emailing me saying, well, how do we do this? Like, how do we talk to our kids about race? And so I started talking to my husband, and I was like, I'm not going to be that blogger on the internet that's just telling people that there's this huge problem all the time and not giving them a solution. And so we started brainstorming what we would call it. And we were like, I wanted to call it Raising an Activist. And he was like, nope. So you have to take activist out. And I'm like, I like that word. That's what I wanted. So we went through the source, and it became Raising an Advocate instead. And he's like, that will resonate with more people. And it did. And so it started as a blog series, and once or twice a month I would write a post about the things that I was going through internally to make sure that I didn't pass it down to my son. And then someone said, hey, you should make this a class. And I was like, no, I don't have time for that. And how would that even look? Like, I don't know what that looks like. And it literally took me 2 years to say, okay, I'm going to make this a class. And so now it's a class and a thing, I guess.
So, okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit, and you said you were raised, and we've talked about this. So I guess I assumed that like white people were the only people who don't really talk about race, and that now seems silly. Because I was raised in a house where we were colorblind. Anybody else like raised in a colorblind house? They're like, we don't see race. Like that is, and yeah. So it turns out, y'all, that's not real. Like I didn't know. It's not real. It's not a thing. And so I was raised in a house where like it was colorblind, and we saw everybody the same. And you said you were raised in a house that didn't talk about race. And now both of us do it publicly, but how did you get there? So how do you get from the place of being like, you're in college and you're 18 and you're like, wait a minute, I don't understand, I need to talk about this, but you don't have the words. Like, how did you get there?
And I should say that like it's not that my parents didn't talk about race, we just didn't talk about how history has played into things. So I didn't understand that I lived in a black neighborhood because my parents made less money. I didn't understand any of those nuances because I don't think my parents really understood the history behind that either. This is just the way it is in the inner city, and that's just, how it's supposed to be. And I would say that really it was books. So it's reading. I had friends who would send me or sneak me books in high school that my parents probably didn't want me to read. And the first one was Roots. And so she said, you can read this over Christmas break. Don't eat while you're reading like the first few chapters. And I was like, that's scary. And I remember reading it, and I used to sit on this bench in the corner in our house because I was always cold. And I was sitting there reading it, and it's like right outside the kitchen. My mom's she's baking or something, and I'm like bawling my eyes out. She's like, what are you reading? Why are you crying? You need to put that book away. Like, if it's going to make you cry, don't read it. And I was like, Mommy, I think we need to know this. Like, how come no one told me that this is how horrific it was? Like, we need to talk about it. And it just was never something she wanted to talk about. So I'm the oldest of 9 children. So I started talking to my siblings about it. I started like telling them about Ruby Bridges, and I was like, did you guys know all this history stuff that we're not learning in school? And that was kind of my introduction to talking about it. But this, specifically, I would say the autobiography of Malcolm X was what changed it all for me. Like, it was this aha, like, there are all these different ways to be politically active, and I've only been taught that I'm just supposed to turn the other cheek, and I'm supposed to be quiet about it and peaceful about it, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that.